Howdy folks! Now a lot of sprites are going to come in and out of this program, and so how are we going to deal with that? Well, in this video we're going to put in the basic structure that will allow us to add and remove sprites at will. Okay, so I've been thinking in the main loop we have some sort of condition that goes and checks for, or goes and possibly makes a new sprite. It's not going to make a new sprite every time because that's 18 new sprites per second, and the game is going to get a little bit crazy really fast. Okay, another thing I was thinking we need at the top of main loop is this command. Now, what scan does is it looks for other inputs while it's still in this branch. And that allows for things like, say I move the mouse, or something else changes somewhere else in the program, it'll allow that to happen. And whenever you have something that's looping continuously, you really should have scan at the top of that just to allow for other things to happen. Okay? Now, just to save some processing power, I'm not going to go to sprite generation every single time because there's going to end up being a lot of complicated stuff that it has to do. So let's say every 10th time. And I am going to keep track of, actually let's do it this way. We're going to keep track of the distance. So distance ticks up by throttle, we'll say. So let's go up here to our preliminary variables and now add distance is equal to 0 at the beginning. Now, if dist is greater than, well, we have to keep track of the last time that it checked it. So let's say we'll make a new variable called dist last. And if it's greater than 10 more than dist last, then we'll go to, or go sub sprite generation. Okay, and now dist last becomes the current distance and end if. Now let's go up here. Every time we add a variable, I like to give its initial value. Sometimes it matters more than other times. This time it does matter. Another thing that happens when, well, I guess this is good enough for sprite generation. Now, if you try and run your program without actually having these labels, the whole thing crashes and just basic closes. So you should remember to add those A's as soon as you remember. So down at the bottom of the program, subroutines, how many do I have now? 1, 2, 3. Whoa. So 1 is called sprite generation. And then at the very end of that we return and it goes back to where it called it. 1 is called sprite position, return, and last but not least, collision test. Okay. Howdy folks, I forgot one thing here. In the beginning of the game, there's not just the hero and the reticule. This would be a good time to point out layers of sprites. And as far as I can tell, the only way to specify what's in the foreground and what's in the background is what you add first. So whatever you add first is going to be in the background, and whatever you add after that is going to be in front of the sprite that you had added previously. So if we're going to have a background sprite, we add those first, and then we add the hero, which is going to be on top. Okay, so print number 1, we're going to do something fancy here. In order to make a realistic looking scrolling game, you want to have several different layers of background. And they move at different speeds, and that really gives you a sense of depth. Now, I know in outer space the stars are going to be so far away that you're not going to see any movement, but this is just a game, so suspend disbelief, please. Alright, so I'm going to add 2 layers of stars. So, add sprite star 0, which is going to be in the background, and we're going to use the bitmap stars that we uploaded. And then we're going to have another layer, star 2 stars. Alright. And another thing I forgot, so our background isn't just white. We say background black. And that's not just saying, hey, I want the background to be black. I actually uploaded a bitmap image called black, and it's just a black square. And you don't have to worry about getting the dimensions exactly right because it'll stretch your bitmap image to fit the background. And when it's just one solid color, you don't have to worry about it being distorted. Where was I? Addsprites. And why don't I go ahead and do this? I don't think you've ever seen this command before. It's called sprite orient. And what it does is you can have it upside down, flipped, mirrored, and I'm going to have it mirrored, and I'll tell you why. The reason is I don't want the stars to ever align, because then people will be like, what? That's cheap. So they won't ever notice if it's mirrored. They're never going to align. So I'll just take one of these, star 2, and mirror it. And that's all she wrote. Okay. And that's all I wanted to interject at the end of this video.